You shouldn't have to fear a court decision because you shouldn't go get an abortion. Just as a moral matter, you should not pursue abortion and believe that the court is the imposition to you, because abortion is immoral and wrong and sinful. Okay, but put all of that aside. The politics here are very good for Democrats, because what Democrats want is for pro-lifers to move really fast and really hard in a wide variety of battleground states, hoping that they will then get the Michigan-Kansas response.
I love the connection between those two parts of what Ben Shapiro said, because it's amazing. He says in closing, the politics are good for Democrats. Why is that? Now, he's never gonna really admit why the Republicans look so bad when they do these things, when they're willing to throw doctors in prison or throw women in prison or whatever, that they fundamentally don't see these people as fully human. That's inescapable at this point. But he says that, seeming to acknowledge that the Republican Party has not been persuasive on this, after he himself just did a horrible job of persuading people of his position. And I just want to briefly mention, many of you watching the show, maybe you haven't been following this for very long. You may not even know what the brand of Ben Shapiro was supposed to be originally. The idea that was supposed to be, and he got glossy magazine write-ups for all this, was he's not like a regular whack job Republican. He's an intellectual gladiator. He's logical. He doesn't care about feelings. He cares about facts, which is how you get that incredibly persuasive call to if you don't think that it's right that you could be locked up for this, just don't do it. It's immoral. It's sinful. Well, I'm persuaded. No, but seriously, like, this is what has become of Ben Shapiro. And look, I'm mostly being sarcastic. I don't think the brand was even in intent accurate initially. The guy liked to do debates, and the brand was always because he wants to persuade people. It's a brand building exercise. That's it. It's how you draw eyeballs. It's not about persuading anyone. It's simply not. And so when you just whine to women or people who can get pregnant that they're being sinful, that's not going to win people over. Historically, or right now, that's not gonna help your position literally right now, Ben Shapiro, or to the many others in the right wing that don't have a better argument than that. Simply stating it's immoral is morally indistinguishable from saying, I don't like it. That's not how you persuade people. And this is not a hypothetical, you're not gonna persuade people. I've been saying for 2 years now, this is why for 50 years they tried and failed to get the American people to agree with them on abortion. They were incapable of doing that because at the end of the day, all of their arguments boil down to that. A whiny little guy like Ben Shapiro telling people that they're being sinful. That's not logic. That's not even a bad argument. That's not an argument. That's you just saying, I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. Some priest told me it was bad. That's not how you win people over, okay? That's why you're losing so many elections. You got your way in the Supreme Court, but people don't like it. Many Republicans don't even agree with you on this, but don't let me get between you and continued failure. Continue to not win people over to your side. Continue to remind people with every show of why so many women find your ideology utterly reprehensible, because you have no respect for them whatsoever. But I don't want to focus too much on Ben Shapiro. There's a whole lot of carbon copies of him. Let's turn now briefly to Charlie Kirk.
Now, to be clear, this was not some liberal ruling designed to put us in a trap. The Arizona Supreme Court is 100% Republican. And frankly, this ruling was likely the correct one, but it still puts us in a very tough spot. So what I sent out yesterday is very clear, which is this, which is sometimes you don't get to choose when you fight the big battles. Getting rid of abortion is an irrefutable and necessary moral good for society in Arizona.
If your kind of way to navigate this is to say, well, make it states' rights. Well, then what happens when a state does outlaw it? If you turn around and oppose that too, well, then it appears that you're just pro-abortion. And that's some of what we're seeing in Arizona right now, where after the Supreme Court decision, a law is gonna go into effect. It's not a federal law, it's a law in that particular state that's gonna ban most abortions. And yet we have people on the right who appear to be opposed to that too. Which doesn't make any sense to me if you're claiming that this is states' rights. Well, that's the state has the right to pass that law, don't they?
And it's been eye-opening to me because what should have been met with celebration, Matt, was met with retreat.
So this is gonna be a weird moment. Matt Walsh is totally right there. I mean, he's utterly wrong on abortion. Like, it's a devastatingly stupid position, incredibly unpopular, and he has no more ability than Ben Shapiro to ever win a single person over to his position on that than Ben Shapiro does. But he is right in saying that, and I get maybe he's not brave enough to say Trump is who he's talking about. If you're saying it's states' rights and then a state passes a horrible law and you suddenly say they shouldn't do that, well, is it states' rights or not? Okay, but anyway, so setting him aside with Charlie Kirk, again, he has, again, no better ability than Ben Shapiro to go beyond simply a statement of the religious dogma or the misinterpretation of religious dogma, because again, the Bible does not have the position on abortion that they would try to fool you into thinking it does. He simply says it's a moral obligation that we don't have abortion. Would you like to make an argument for that? Would you like to make an argument that could win over the many, many Christians who don't agree with you, let alone the non-Christians who don't agree with you? Would you like you're a political pundit. You're supposed to be able to like make an argument, even a bad one. Again, this is not a bad argument. This is not an argument at all. It's simply a recitation of flawed religious dogma. That's all it is. And you might think, well, why is it? And I'll end on this. Why is it that there's such a big gap between people like Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, Matt Walsh, and Donald Trump or other Republicans in this way? Well, first of all, at the state level, there isn't necessarily, because again, Republicans in Arizona are desperately trying to keep this law on the books. But there is a gap because at the end of the day, the incentives are very different. And some of the ways that they're different are fairly obvious, they're transparent, but some are not. These people at the end of the day are influencers or whatever. They're media grifters. They have acquired an audience. They looked out across the political landscape and they said, okay, here's a group that desperately wants to hear this thing. Let me just say that that's my worldview or whatever, and then I'll say it and then they'll watch me or whatever. And they need that. They like, not one of those guys is gonna stand on principle if it results in them having to get a real job or something. No, they're gonna continue to say whatever they think. And the morally pure position is strip every bit of these rights away. These people don't deserve consideration at all. They don't deserve control over their body. And you say something like that, not because it's a governing philosophy that makes sense or it can help you to put together a coalition that wins an election or anything like that. At the end of the day, they might say they want those things. They want to win elections, but that's not their prime incentive. Their prime incentive is to be morally pure in an utterly immoral fashion for my worldview. But that's what they're doing. And they're doing a good job of it by saying there should effectively be no exceptions whatsoever. Remember, the bill that they're supporting in Arizona is worse than many of the modern ones in terms of exceptions, but they're fine with that because that's what they need to reassure their audience. And I will also say once, I might have mentioned this last week, don't simply take for granted that these guys want Trump to win. I know that they would say that they want Trump to win. He's the Republican after all. But is that actually better for the pursuit of their actual incentives? The audience share, the money and all of that. Is that actually what they want at the end of the day? To get Donald Trump in there, pass more unpopular bills or what? Like, really? Maybe. Just throwing it out there as a thought experiment.